chapter 7 tonight. Such a blessing to be with you tonight and to look at this wonderful, marvelous passage of Scripture. So Daniel chapter 7. So far, the book of Daniel, it runs, doesn't it? So far, we've looked at Daniel chapter 1, which is Daniel being captured and led captive into Babylon, and sort of what happened there in his early years. And then chapter 2 is Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Remember, of the 4 kingdoms. Chapter 3 was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get thrown into the burning fiery furnace, and God, the Holy One of Israel, delivers them out of the furnace. Chapter 4 was King Nebuchadnezzar and his second dream and his great humbling, when God brought him down and made him like a beast of the field, and then restored him to his kingdom, and he gave praise to the God of Israel. Chapter 5 was King Belshazzar, who was the grandson, really, of Nebuchadnezzar, who saw the handwriting on the wall, remember? And the kingdom was taken from him and given to the Medes and Persians. Chapter 6, which we looked at last week, was Daniel in the lion's den. And so this night, we're going to take a look at Daniel's vision of the 4 beasts. Let's read that and see what we can learn. Now, by the way, all the chapters except for part of the first one so far have been in Aramaic. Interesting, most of the Bible's written in Hebrew. Aramaic, for whatever reason, we don't know exactly why it's Aramaic, but perhaps because it's written for maybe all the nations to know these things, of these chapters especially. And then chapters 8 through 12 are going to be in Hebrew. So it may be written more specifically for the Hebrews, although I don't know all the reasons why it's Aramaic, Hebrew, but those are the chapter divisions. Let's take a look then at Daniel chapter 7, see how far maybe we can get through it tonight. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. All right, so when does Daniel have this dream? This is my first question if you have the sheet. When and where does this take place? At night, and he's on his bed. And he has a dream, which is a vision. Now, sometimes you have visions during the day, right? While you're awake from praying, like Peter, he's on the housetop, and he falls into a trance while he's awake, and he sees the vision that tells him to go bring the gospel to the Gentiles. Here, Daniel receives this, it seems, in a dream of night, where God also speaks to us and gives us visions. And so he gave this vision to Daniel in the first year of King Belshazzar, who was co-regent with his father Nabonidus, who was the son of the king, King Nebuchadnezzar. All right, so this is after King Nebuchadnezzar had died and before King Belshazzar saw the handwriting on the wall and his kingdom was taken from him. So, what is a dream or a vision, by the way? If it's a real one from God, it's his delivering to you a message, something he wants to tell you, about real things, but in picture language, symbolic language. So not all of the Bibles to be written or to be interpreted literally. Some parts are told, they're dreams, visions, pictures, called apocalyptic language, speaking about real concrete things that are going to happen, but in picture language. So, and this is one of those cases where the dream or the vision is going to be in picture language, symbolic, speaking about real events in history, but through the venue, through the means, through the avenue of a picture, a symbol, pointing to the realities that it represents. Okay? So, let's read the vision first, and then we'll get into some more of the details of it. So, I'm going to read verses 2 to 14. Here we go. Daniel said, I saw in my vision. Remember, he wrote this down. I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. Can you picture that in your mind? Yeah. The great, briny, dark, wine-dark sea, and the winds are whipping almost like a hurricane, and the wave crests are being blown off the top by the wind. There's a great as it were, storm, typhoon at sea. There's a great wind on the briny deep, the great sea. And four great beasts came up out of the sea. They came up. Did you see Godzilla? You ever see that one where, he's just boom, 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 and he's walking up out of the sea. It's terrifying. Well, these beasts came up out of the sea. 4 great beasts. Okay, how many? 4. Different from one another. So each of these is going to be distinct. Though they all kind of work together in the same anti-Christian spirit. Okay, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Ooh. And then, as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand upon 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. Beast number 1. Now we go on to number 2. And behold, another beast, a second one like a bear. It was raised up on one side, and had 3 of the ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. A bear. Thirdly, after this I looked, and lo, another, like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back, and the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Okay, so that's number 3, is the leopard. 7, okay, hold on to your little britches. This is the terrifying, most dreadful of them all. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast. Terrible! Yeah, that's good. Thank you, little microphone, for that. And dreadful and exceedingly strong. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet. It was different from the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by its roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Okay, so that's the beasts. Now we go on to a different part of the vision. Verse 9. As I looked, thrones were placed. This is, if you would picture it, maybe I'd picture this above the beasts at a higher elevation. It doesn't say that, but it certainly seems so based on what it means. Okay? As I looked, thrones were placed, and one that was ancient of days took his seat. Say, Ancient of Days.
Ancient of Days.
Oh, we like that one. We sing of that one. Oh, worship the King of glorious above. Oh, gratefully sing his power and his love. His chariots of breath, the dark fleet from clouds form, and darkness is path on the wings of the storm. And then he says, it says, of him, the Ancient of Days. We sing in that hymn of God, right? So we're talking God here. That's a little spoiler alert. Okay. One that was Ancient of Days took his seat. His raiment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. So if your hair is getting white, by the way, rejoice, you're looking more like God every day. It's true. His throne, isn't that neat how God designed it that way? We don't like white hair because we're thinking we're getting older, yada, yada, yada. But guess what? You're actually becoming more like God in his look as you get older. Anyway.
Which person of God?
Well, this is going to be the Father, but spoiler alert once again. Okay. His raiment was white as snow, although this is also used the same description in Revelation 1 of Jesus, but he's going to come up in a second here in the same vision. The hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. Remember Ezekiel when he saw God? Wheels of his chariots about him with eyes all in the wheels. A stream of fire issued and came forth from before him. Can you picture that? A stream of fire from before him? Ooh, wow, what a picture. Okay, 1,000 thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. Woo! All right, court, judgment up there, going on in heaven. Okay, verse 11. I looked then, because of the sound of the great words which the horn was speaking. Now we're back down with the horn from the 4th beast. It's talking and it's saying great things. Note, great things doesn't mean good things. These are blasphemous words. And as I looked, the beast was slain. After the court judgment up above. and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. God always judges with fire, by the way. Fire is also something that purifies, but when God destroys by fire, that's usually the symbol of his judgment. Hell, by the way, is fire, right? Burning lake. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. A son of man? And he came to the Ancient of Days, which we just heard about, and was presented before him. So there's a son of man appearing before the Ancient of Days on his throne, from which goes the fire and everything. And to him, to the Son of Man who came to the Ancient of Days, was given dominion and glory and kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. Singular, by the way. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. His kingdom, in other words, is eternal. All the other beasts, the four beasts, in other words, their kingdom is for a time. The Son of Man's kingdom is forever. Verse 15, as for me, just a little bit more, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. In other words, he was completely overwhelmed and appalled at what he saw. It was so overwhelming, he was basically undone and shaking in alarms at what he saw. All right, and then we'll pick up more later, okay? So let's go back and look at what this actually is. So here's a picture, some pictures I drew up here for you. We got four beasts. He has a vision of four beasts. The first one is the lion, the second is the bear, the third is the leopard, the fourth is just terrible. You know what? When God gave them fourth beast, Daniel couldn't even describe it, because all these others are in the animal kingdom that we know, right? This one was so terrifying that no creature within the animal kingdom could be found to describe how terrifying and fierce this last beast was. Okay, this is already pretty terrifying, isn't it? Okay, so how do we want to describe this? Okay, notice, remember Dick Roten, he's not here this week.
No.
Well, let's put this up here. I'll jump around here. Remember King Nebuchadnezzar's dream? Over here? Remember the first one was the kingdom was gold, and then the next one was silver, then bronze, and then iron and clay. Notice that this is more precious, the kingdoms that came earlier, and then less costly, less costly, and less costly. Gold is more costly than silver, which is more costly than bronze, which is more costly than iron. But what he noted for us was that the strength of these metals becomes stronger the further down you go. Gold is not as strong as silver, which is not as strong as bronze, which is not as strong as iron. Right? Notice, by the way, the fourth beast here is going to have teeth of iron, like iron. Right? Okay. So, all right, let's just go through. First of all, let's just say this, question 3 on your sheet, and we'll come back to the details of each of these things. We'll go through the details of it. How does this, right here, these beasts, relate to Revelation 13? You know Revelation 13? Let's just see briefly if that sounds similar. Okay, Revelation 13, John is writing here basically of the beast, which is Antichrist. Okay. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea. Does that sound familiar? With 10 horns and 7 heads. 10 horns sound familiar? Same as Daniel. With 10 diadems upon its horns and a blasphemous name upon its heads. The beast that I saw was like a leopard. Okay? Its feet were like a bear's. And its mouth was like a lion's mouth. Isn't that interesting? So Daniel's vision, which is 4 distinct, what we're going to say is kingdoms. In John, when he sees it, it's all combined into one in his vision. But it's obviously the same. And to it the dragon gave his power and its throne and great authority. So these are symbolic of Antichrist kingdoms, to which the devil, the chief evil one of the world, gives his power seeking to destroy the church and destroy the Christians. Okay, the kingdoms of the world. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, and its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth followed the beast with wonder. In other words, everybody's going to follow this unless they're Christians. Men worship the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, "Who's like the beast, and who can fight against it?" And we're going to, more of this is similar, but we won't get to that right now. Does it sound like we're talking about the same thing?
Yes.
So, Revelation 13, very easy to see, Antichrist. Over here, this is the vision of kingdoms of the world that are anti-Christian. How do we know this? Question 4, did Daniel understand the vision? Well, what do we read here?
No.
My spirit was within me, was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. Verse 16 of Daniel 7, he says, I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. In other words, what does this mean? Good Lutheran question, right? That's all of our catechism. What does this mean? Well, Daniel's a good Lutheran. Okay. Well, he's a good Christian.
This is most certainly true.
This is most certainly true. That's also good. So he told me, who did Daniel go and ask to interpret the vision for him? One of those who stood there. Namely, one of the ones probably stood around the court of the Ancient of Days, which is angels. So he's going to, like he does in other places, he asked the angel, what does this mean? The angel's going to give him an explanation. Okay, so he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the thing. So you ready to understand what all this means? We got the picture though, right? You know what it looks like, but now let's understand what it actually is telling us, or telling Daniel and telling us. The angel, verse 17 says, these 4 great beasts are, equal sign, 4 kings. By the way, the word kings can mean king or kingdom. As we're going to see, the angel uses those interchangeably. 4 kings who shall rise out of the earth. Why is it out of the earth, since they came out of the sea? Well, I'll have to give you my best interpretation of this, is the sea in the scriptures, even though I love the sea and we're all sailors here pretty much, the sea is usually chaos and evil, number 1. Also, in Revelation 17, remember the harlot is seated upon the scarlet beast, which is upon many waters. Remember that in Revelation 17? What are the waters interpreted in Revelation 17? The angel says there, and the waters that you saw are peoples and nations and tongues, and kingdoms, I think it was. The waters that you saw were the harlot sea. There are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So when it comes out of the roaring deep ocean and these beasts rise up, they're coming out of the multitudes of the nations of the world. Okay? Kretzmann, Lutheran commentator here, says, world powers rising out of the agitation of the political sea of the heathen world, one after another issuing from the great deep. Okay. Alright, so 4 kingdoms, we got that much. 4 kings, 4 kingdoms. Which kingdoms? Let's go to this part first. What is the sum of the dream's message, verses 15 to 19? Let's look at verse 17 to 18. Okay, this is very important for your encouragement here, okay? These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall rise out of the earth. But, say but. One of my favorite words in the Bible, because what does it do? It cancels out whatever comes before it. Your dinner tonight was great, but means the dinner really sucked. It was very bad. It was no good. So, but cancels out what came before it. So the 4 great beasts are terrifying, but means something good is coming that's going to cancel that. Okay? So, but the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. Forever, forever and ever. In other words, eternally. Okay? So what can we say about this whole vision for your encouragement? Basically, okay, the church over here, right there is a picture of the flag, the Christian flag. The church wins. Okay? This is what the vision is all about, or partially what it's about. It's going to fall off. I'm going to need a new tape. the church wins. So you get first prize. This is what the dream is about. You get the blue ribbon at the end, which is an eternal kingdom. Okay, so keep that in mind because the rest of the dream is kind of terrifying, the vision. And then I might fall because it's just painting things. But you win. So this is a great vision, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a great vision. This is about the saints winning in the end through what God does. Okay, and then he's going to know. Okay, so let's talk about which are these. Is that the next part? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who do the first three beasts out of the sea represent? Okay, he doesn't tell us here specifically. However, it's very obvious.
The same as the other dream.
We're relating it throughout both the vision of given to King Nebuchadnezzar. He had a dream of 4 kingdoms, didn't he? And it was interpreted very clearly what those were. Namely, the first one is the kingdom of Babylon. It's you, O king Nebuchadnezzar. You're the first one, and your kingdom, the head of gold. The second one are the Medes and the Persians, who will come after you. The third one will be the kingdom of Greece, the bronze one, and the fourth one will be, it's not mentioned specifically, but we all know by history very clearly, Rome. So what are these 4, do you think, going to represent? It's the same thing. Okay, so this is Babylon as the first one. The second one is the Medes and the Persians. This is the bear. And I can show that again also by Daniel 8 in just a second. The third one is Greece. And the fourth one is Rome. You got to roll the R. Rome. I won't tell the dream I had this morning, but I was actually, I gotta keep you guys going. I gotta keep going. It was a funny dream, though. He knows it. Okay, so the fourth one is Rome. So this is the dream of the kingdoms that are coming, that will be in the earth, all anti-Christian against the church, in which the church must live for a time until they are given the kingdom and they win eternally. Okay? That's going to keep falling off, but we'll keep working with it. Okay. Now, so the fourth beast is terrible, exceedingly dreadful, and exceedingly strong. It has iron teeth. Okay, let's go through this more specifically in details. Okay. Okay, back to verse 4. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, the wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand upon 2 feet like a man. The mind of a man was given to it. What does that mean? Well, it's a lion, it's Babylon, it's the head of gold, and it conquers. I gotta get a better piece of tape. That's why I usually use, what is it called? Masking tape, but then it makes marks all over these things.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can just do it this way. That'll be better, I think. I hope. Painter's tape comes off easily. Oh. Painter's tape comes off easily for a reason, right?
Being very defiant.
Trying. Yeah. That's why if you ever give a sermon, make sure you always use masking tape. It won't fall off. It'll wreck your board, but it won't fall off. That's going to fall off again. Oh, thank you. Okay, go for it. Always helpful there. All right, awesome. Okay, now what does it mean, just briefly here? It was conquering, it had wings. In other words, it moved very swiftly. It had great power. It conquered the whole world, Babylon did. But then remember, it was made to stand upon 2 feet like a man. Remember what happened to King Nebuchadnezzar? He was very proud, and then he was humbled, right? And the mind of the man was given to it. Remember, he was made like a beast in the field, gone crazy till he was humbled. Then he became a sound-minded man and praised God. It's the first beast. The second beast, remember, is a bear. Raised up on one side, had 3 ribs in its mouth, between its teeth, Medes and Persians. There's something about, it did conquer 3 different areas. I have to look that up. That's, I think, next week I'll get to that. It devoured much flesh. This is the kingdom of the Medes and Persians. After this, I looked, a leopard with 4 wings of a bird on its back. In other words, it moves swiftly to conquer the world. Who's that? Greece. Remember King Alexander the Great? He conquered the whole ancient world by the time he was like 31, 33, and then he went crazy because he had no more kingdoms to conquer. He died young. His kids did not inherit the kingdom. It was divided into 4 of his generals. And they became kings over 4 different provinces of Greece, as we're going to look more in detail in Daniel 8. So 4 wings of a bird, and the beast had 4 heads. So it became 4 kingdoms. Greece did. That's in history. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrible, dreadful, exceedingly strong. Rome. And this beast, by the way, is going to continue to the end of time, even though it does get destroyed, as Rome did in history. The Roman Empire basically continues to the end of time. Revelation 13 is about that, and it continues to the end. Ultimately, a certain form of the Roman Empire that continues to crush the Christians to the end. It had great iron teeth, just like the iron feet over here. It was different from the other beasts. We talked about that. It had 10 horns. What are horns representative of? Usually kings. Within it, it's strength. Your horn is your strength. It's a king. It could also be the 10 provinces of Rome. Different people number them differently. However, some have numbered the Roman provinces as number 1, Alemanni, which is Greek of Germany. Number 2, the Franks, France. Number 3, the Burgundians, Switzerland. Number 4, the Suevi, which is Portugal. Number 5 was the Vandals, who were exterminated. Number 6, the Visigoths, which was Spain. Number 7 was Anglo-Saxons, England. Number 8, the Ostrogoths, they were exterminated. Number 9 was the Lombards, Italy. And number 10 was the Heruli, who were exterminated. The 10 provinces of Rome. I'm not sure if that's the exact interpretation, but nevertheless, 10 kings of Rome, Roman Empire, also a symbol for strength, the number 10. Then we're going to consider, I considered verse 8, the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by its roots. And behold, in this horn were the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So there's going to be one king that will rise out of Rome, basically worse than all the others. He'll conquer some of the other ones, and he will speak blasphemous words. We're going to see later on, if we get to it, he sets himself up basically as God, thinking he can change the times and the seasons just like God can do. And he makes war upon the saints, this little horn, this Antichrist, with a capital A, if you will. Then we skip over in verse 8. As I looked, thrones were placed, and one that was ancient days took his seat. So who is that? God. So, this is a bright light, isn't it? Woo! Gets you, doesn't it? Picture that. You got God up here on top, down on his throne. He's in his realm of unapproachable light, and he takes his seat up there over all these things. We did his hair as white as what? The snow. He's pure. He's like pure wool. He's completely righteous, in other words. 100% pure. God is light, and in him is no darkness at all, says Jesus through the Apostle John. His throne, fiery flames. He's holy. Its wheels burning fire. In other words, he runs swiftly to punish the wicked with his fire and to purify his people. 1,000 served him. Who's that? Angels. Revelation 5 verse 11 says, myriads and myriads and thousands of thousands served him. The angels in heaven, all bowing in worship before God on his throne. And the court sat in judgment. So God basically calls his angels in, his sons of God, like it did in the days of Job, and has court with them. And they discuss things. Although God's running everything, but he allows them some words, and they have a judgment, and the angels all have their own words to say. The world needs to be punished for its sins. Yes, O Lord. Things like that. Because notice, the books were opened. What's that remind you of? Revelation 20? Remember when Jesus comes and sits on his throne, and books are opened in which are written what? Everything every man, woman, child has ever done in their entire life in the history of the world. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books, by what they had done. So, this is a picture of Revelation 20, the end of time and judgment. So these are pictures, by the way, of the end of the world, the way it's going to go to the end of time. Okay. I looked then, because of the sound of the great words, which the horn was speaking. And as I looked, the beast was slain. So what does it mean? That means the little horn, which is the Antichrist with a capital A, who's going to appear in the history of time, is going to speak great words, which means blasphemous words, blaspheming God and his dwelling, and those who dwell there, those who dwell in heaven, Revelation 13. So it's because of the wicked scoundrel Antichrist and his railings against God at the end of time getting hotter and higher and more vicious, as we're seeing in our days on the news, that the court in heaven looks at that and says, it's time, God. And God has his day fixed, and he says, slain. Because of the great blasphemous words of the Antichrist, God, on account and reaction to that, acts and destroys him. Isn't that a good word? Remember, you win. This is for you. But you got to endure him in the meantime.
Kiss the
We
Quran.
can't get rid of him yet. Yeah, oh yeah. We'll get to that. Its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. Okay? As for the rest of the beasts, so at the end of time, the Roman Empire, which is destroyed in time and also at the end of time, will be put away. Destroyed. But as for these other beasts, they didn't continue in their kingdom and power, did they? They ended. Rome remains in power to the end of time. But they ended. Their kingdom, their dominion was taken away, but they endured for a time. Okay. Okay, now, who is this little horn? We're going to get to that later, but you already alluded to it. I would say, should we say this yet? Let's just finish this part first. Okay, and as for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. Okay, so previously, we had a son of man here. That's all we knew about him. Who is that really? No, it's not just the Son of Man, it's Jesus, our Lord. And he often refers to himself in the Gospels continually as what? The Son of Man. Here it's the same name. What does he do? We read that he appears, says, there came one like the Son of Man, and he came to the Ancient of Days. Who's that again?
God.
The Son of Man, up here in heaven, comes to God up on his throne in the high places before all the angels. And what happens when he comes before his Father? He is presented before him. He comes and stands before him like, say I'm Jesus, he stands before the Father. And it says, and to him was given dominion and glory and kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. Okay, so God the Father gives what? All things to his Son. What does Jesus say when he died and goes up and he appears to his disciples before he's raised? All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, etc. All authority has been given to Jesus by the Father. He is the one who appears before the Ancient of Days here. He gets dominion, glory, kingdom, that all people's languages should serve him. Psalm 2. Remember Psalm 2? You know, that God gives everything to his Son, that he rules all the nations with a rod of iron. We love that, because he's awesome. He's the best. And his kingdom is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. Okay, so this is all a story about the hero beats all the bad guys and villains. It's as if he is the white hat cowboy who rides into Dodge City singly on a white horse all by himself. The town is filled with every nook and cranny, of the saloon to the hotel to whatever, to the corral, and they've all got guns trained on them. They're all bandits, they're all evil people. There's one really bad one. He walks into town and just goes, and he wins, and he beats everybody. And he's the hero, and he sets all you and me, the townsfolk, free. And we get to live happily forever after in a place with law and order, with a freedom and a good king, a good hero, now sheriff, you know, that kind of thing. Just to put it in modern kind of terms. All right, okay, now, Where are we on this one? Done that one, done that one, done that one, done that one. Okay. How does this relate to the king Nebuchadnezzar's dream? It's the same thing. Remember this dream? Because this dream also about the four kingdoms, what was that about? Was it about four kingdoms? Ultimately, it wasn't. It was really about the stone that was cut by no human hand, namely from heaven. The stone who does what? Comes in and smashes the image of all these other kingdoms and sets up in a kingdom that's eternal. Who is Jesus? The very stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. Right? If anyone falls on that stone, it'll be broken. If that stone falls on anyone, it'll crush them to dust. Right? So he is the chief cornerstone, Jesus. So it's the same dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had, except now it's going to be in more detail. And Daniel chapter 8 and following, more details given to us. And remember, whenever a dream is doubled in the Bible, what's that mean? Because Pharaoh's dream was twice the same, Joseph told Pharaoh, that means the dream is the dream is certain and its interpretation is sure. In other words, it's coming to pass. Here we get multiple, and the testimony of two or three witnesses. This is the way it's going to happen. Is this comforting to you, by the way? I mean, we're dealing with a world right now that's going nuts. The kingdoms of the world are all in concert together working evil, planning mischief, trying to destroy and depopulate the earth. It's true, really. They're doing wickednesses. Terrible stuff. That's just something you got to endure according to the Bible to the end of time. But you win in the end. He gives it to the saints. They get it. Jesus is the hero. He gets all the glory. And you get to share with him in it. That's what the story is about. This is supposed to be encouraging to you from God through the Holy Spirit. You win. Don't sweat it. Be heroes. We got this. I've already determined you're going to win, so live like winners. Don't let these things terrify you that are going on in the world. I got this. Courts in heaven, judgment, angels. I got this. Just play your part. You're going to win in the end. I'll set you on high. So keep the Christ. Should we go on just a little bit more? Let's try this. Verse 19. Daniel wants to know a little bit more. And then I desired to know the truth concerning the fourth beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrible, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped the residue with its feet. And concerning the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, and before which 3 of them fell, the horn which had eyes, and a mouth that spoke 3 great things, and which seemed greater than its fellows. Okay? So this gets progressively worse, right? And you get 10 horns that are pretty bad. But the little horn, number 11, worst of all. That's the one we're talking about here. As I looked, this horn made war with the saints. Are you a saint? So this is your enemy. Okay, we're talking about it. It makes war against you. Uh-oh, what's it say? And prevailed over them. Do you like that word? I find that one of the hardest in the Bible to accept. Not that I don't believe it, but it's tough. Because it means you're fighting in a war against the Antichrist, and he's allowed to beat you up and win in a certain sense. Okay? It says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High. Remember the court in heaven again? And the time came when the saints received the kingdom. So you're going to win in the end. But until then, you have to fight Antichrist. And what do we read? He prevails. He wars against the church and prevails. What's it mean that he prevails? Is this also in Revelation 13? Let's look at that just for briefly. Also, verse 7, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. That's a tough one, isn't it? We want to always be winning and everything go great. Let me give you my understanding of Antichrist prevailing over the church. The beast conquering the church and making war. What that means, I believe, is only in a physical way in terms of our influence in the world. What do you see right now, since the 50s especially? churches getting whittled away by the spirits in the colleges, the spirits in military higher-ups, the political regions, and especially within the church, false churches teaching false doctrines, where we're, by the way, to expect Antichrist within the temple of God, proclaiming himself as God, and whittling away the church as influence in the world. Do you feel like the church is on the decline? At least so far, it seems to be its influence in the world has been dwindling. It seems, in my mind, especially towards the end of time. So there's an outward sense that the Antichrist can attack. He can kind of win in culture sometimes. He also, not always, by the way, and he also can put you in jail, can't he? Can he beat you up and get you stoned, like with Paul? He can do that. He can beat up your body. He can put you in prison, and he can kill you, because Paul was killed, Peter was killed, James was killed, not before God said they could be killed, but remember, they can be killed. That's all he can do. Don't be afraid of those who can kill the body, says Jesus, and that's all they can do. Fear him who after he's killed has the power to cast into hell, right? What can the Antichrist not do? He can't conquer you spiritually. Unless you, of course, depart from Christ or something. But Christians always win. How do we know this? Well, look at Revelation, jump around my notes. Okay. Revelation 12. And they, namely the saints, have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. So they died, maybe got killed for their faith, but notice, they conquered the devil, and they conquered the beast, and they didn't worship its image. Everybody on earth is going to worship the beast and its image, except for the Christians. There's only that one happy breed of men, right, who do not submit to the beast, and that's those who've been written in the Lamb's book from before the foundation of the world. They will conquer by their testimony and by the blood of the Lamb. So, when you read this part in here about the beast and the little horn making war on the saints and conquering them, I think this means in culture, we don't have all influence to the end of time. Our influence gets whittled towards the end of time. The politics go crazy, the entertainment goes crazy, the education system goes crazy, the churches go crazy that are not in Christ. But the true Christians are always winning. They're always holding fast to Christ. They're always conquering. So that's the way I understand it. I think that's right. So don't let this feel like, oh, I'm going to lose my salvation. No, he doesn't have that power. He can only take your body if it's God's will. He can't take your soul. Okay, so you're going to win again. Should we quit there for tonight? Because we got 10 minutes. Or should we finish this up? Let's see how far I can go. I'm living dangerously. Thus he said, as for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth. That's Rome. Remember, that's the one in which, time-wise, chronologically, the Christ was to come and set up his kingdom. Did Jesus come during the Roman Empire? Yes, he did. Amen. This is most certainly so. And therefore, praise God, it's all ticking off according to God's timetable marvelously. Oh, what a drama. What a story he's written. What a royal epic story you're part of. And Jesus is the hero, and you're going to win. So, as for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall rise. I don't know exactly what that means. Lots of power. I can't interpret that perfectly. It could be the 10 provinces. It could be other kings. Maybe someone knows that better than I do. But I don't know if anybody can know it perfectly. And another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. Similar to Revelation 17, by the way. He shall speak words against the Most High. Okay, blasphemies. And that's in Revelation 13, beast as well. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High. So notice they get tired in the battle. They keep fighting, and it's a long fight, and he is just given power by the devil, and it's a tough fight. And the strength of the church in the world, at least its influence, is kind of whittled away. So we've got Rome, okay? Here's a Roman soldier symbolizing Rome, okay? If you look at Revelation 13, which we don't have time for tonight, there's the kingdoms of the world, Antichrist, namely all the world powers. Do we see that happening today? All of them gathering together in an anti-Christian way. And then there's a good-looking Roman soldier. Okay? Who is that? That's spiritual Antichrist. There is a beast, and then a false prophet Antichrist, who is also in the Roman Empire, arising out of it, but spiritual. And looking good. He has two horns like a lamb. He looks like a Christian, but he speaks like a dragon. Right? Who do you think that might be? Well, the Lutheran Church has confessed for 500 years. The Pope of Rome has fulfilled this. He's come out of the Roman Empire, false prophet, within the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God, which he's done. He has condemned the gospel at the Council of Trent in the 1500s and the days of Luther. Cursed you to hell if you believe the gospel, according to the Council of Trent, Canons 9 and 13. And so we get more details in Revelation. You got the kings of the earth all together with the Roman papacy, all in one big group, even though they hate each other, warring against the true Christians on the earth to try to destroy them. What's happened in the history of time? The Roman Pope has also ruled the kings of the earth and gone after the Christians to kill them. The French wars of religion, where my ancestors, the Huguenots, at least the Lisieurs, in France, were run out of France in the 1600s because the Catholics were killing everybody. 40% of France in the 1600s and before were Reformed Christians, actually followers of John Calvin. By the end of the French wars of religion, like 1% of France was Christian, or was non-Catholic, because the Catholics just killed everybody. And that's the case in a lot of places, unfortunately. Don't see them quite as fierce these days with a sword, but they're still the Pope of today, the Jesuit priest, Pope Francis. I think he's the sneakiest of them all. And he's promoting now gay marriage, and he's saying all the religions are worshiping the same, and the Muslims worship the same God as we worship, and he's allowing himself to be blessed by, Aborigine and Australian witch doctors and stuff. I mean, come on, watch out for Rome and the kingdoms of the world, spiritual Roman Empire too. It's still around to the end. And what does he do? He shall speak words against the Most High, blasphemous words, shall wear out the saints of the Most High, attacking them and constantly threatening them and putting them in prison, etc., killing, and shall think to change the times and the law. Wait a second, who changes the times and the law according to Daniel and Daniel 2? God! That's God's job, but he thinks he's going to do it. I'm going to try to move here just so I can finish this. But, when I was in 2020, and they were putting aside the Constitution and your liberties and arresting women, taking their children to the park up there in Wisconsin, remember that? I remember watching a policeman getting on there doing a video, not on main line stuff because they wouldn't allow it. And he said, I served in the military, I'm a Marine, I'm a combat veteran, I've sworn to uphold the Constitution, I'm a police officer, I've sworn to uphold the Constitution. And what they're doing right now, they're trying to change the laws. And I remember I'd been memorizing in Daniel, and I was like, he just said it. They're changing the laws. That's true. They're trying to change the times and the laws. I started thinking, oh God, is what I'm seeing, what I'm reading in Daniel 7, is that what's going on? This Daniel at the end of this was alarmed and his color changed. And I was like, I wasn't so much troubled by the events of the world as I was like, oh my goodness, am I seeing what Daniel 7? And I had to take a sabbatical. Over that, because I was like Daniel, my color changed, and I was like, oh, he got upset at seeing the vision. Am I actually seeing the real thing? Okay, and they shall be given into his hand. Who? The saints into his hand for a time, 2 times, and half a time. here's the good word, he only has power to wage war and win for a limited time. It's a limited time offer, okay? It extinguishes and it ends at one point, okay? Very short. He has a very tiny little whisper of time when he can do these things, okay? Then you get it forever, the kingdom. But the court shall sit in judgment, namely in heaven, with God with his angels, and his dominion shall be taken away. The Antichrist, Pope, and his evil doctrines and wielding of his wicked sword on the earth, swept away from him, and all Antichrist powers the same, because Pope is just a symbol of all the Antichrist powers that are out there, really. And to be consumed and destroyed to the end. So God will take care of it and deal with his enemies. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. So God, sitting on his throne up there in heaven, I wish I could just bring up the chair, it's not here, it's got a tree now. Sits on his throne and says, the royal decree is, Antichrist, you're out. Saints, the kingdom is yours. Within Christ and eternally. Come, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Which is, by the way, so beautiful. No eye has seen or ear heard it, but man, it's going to be mountains, seas, trees, creatures, us in glory, resurrected with Christ. He's crowned, he's king, we rule with him, and it's glory and joy forever in peaceful habitations and in quiet resting places, and every blessing of joy and glory upon your head. Here is the end of the matter, and all nations, all dominions shall serve and obey them. In other words, we rule forever. 28, here is the end of the matter, says the angel to Daniel. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me. In other words, overwhelmed by these things, and my color changed, because he didn't understand all of it. We don't understand all of it. I'm giving you as much as I understand of it and what I think it means. And my color changed. Remember King Belshazzar, when he saw the handwriting on the wall, his color changed for a different reason. Unholy fear. Daniel's is a holy awe at what he saw, overwhelmed at it, the power of it. But I kept the matter in my mind. And that reminds me, remember, of Mary, remember? She kept all these things, pondering them in her heart. What did these things mean when the shepherds said they saw a vision of angels and he's going to be the king? And what does all this mean? I pondered them in my heart. Well, Daniel was like, I've seen all these things. I understand them in part, God, but what do these things mean? And you're going to find in the following chapters, Daniel's going to keep asking more questions like, I kind of get it, but I don't fully get it. Reveal more, Lord, and when? And, oh, God. And we're the same way. I mean, we do our best to understand these things. These are very deep. I don't think anybody knows every I and dotted and every T crossed for these, but I believe this. I certainly know the overall story of it. This is clear. And I can't say, that it just says, it is the Pope of Rome. But it seems quite clear. He is the spiritualized Roman Empire, emperor, and he's cursed the gospel, unfortunately, at the Council of Trent, and still does, unfortunately, and leads many astray into false doctrines and false gospels to condemn them, unfortunately, by his sorcery, etc. But you win, and this is eternal. Oh, I had one last thing. We're 8 o'clock. I have one more thing. I always have one more thing. See, I've spoken so quickly, I hope I haven't overwhelmed you. But I speak quickly because I'm trying to get through. I don't want to leave you halfway through and say, oh, well, pick it up next week with Daniel. Daniel, you can't just leave halfway. This is a picture of Naomi in Lyme Regis in England. But here's, we saw this one. What do you make of that picture? This was a statue erected in 2022 outside the United Nations in New York City. Does that look any bit familiar to you? Yeah. I can't exactly again say, it is this, but on the other hand, notice it has the body of a leopard, the feet of a bear, the mouth of a lion, and the wings like a great eagle. Pure coincidence. Pure coincidence. And the United Nations said under it that this is our symbol for the guardian for international peace and security.
Oh my
Do you have that as your, does that look like it's comforting? Like, oh, you're taking good care of me now. No, I don't know about that. So I find the United Nations is what? It's basically getting the Roman Empire all back together, which has still been around, but it's now really much more together, working to work against the church to destroy it. By the way, a few other little tidbits. This goes with that point, so I'm not adding extra points. Do you know that when the United Nations started after World War II, that their original publishing agency for the United Nations was called the Lucifer Publishing Agency? Company, I mean, or agency, incorporated. And you know where they were located? At, dun, 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 666 United Nations Plaza. They've since changed the word Lucifer Publishing Company to Lucis, L-U-C-I-S, Publishing or something, and they've changed the name of the street, but it was originally Lucifer Publishing Agency at 666 United Nations Plaza. And it's the United Nations that is working on all these things that we're seeing today, which I won't get into the details of. We don't need to do that today. But I just wonder, are they a fulfillment of that? Here's one more picture of it. That's what it looks like. And I think they've since removed the picture because people were saying that it looked like Revelation 13 to them, and they didn't like all the publicity. So, I don't know, just throw it out there. Maybe it was just a nice picture. Some kids in a little kindergarten art class were putting together some things and just came up with something that looked like that. But on the other hand, I just put it out there. Who knows? Maybe. But always remember, in this world, this is the last thing I'll say tonight, is never forget, don't be afraid of these things. The whole story that we looked at tonight, as terrifying as these are, you win. And the hero with a capital H is Jesus, and he keeps you the whole way. His cross, his blood, his resurrection, and in the end, very shortly, you're going to stand in glory, and it's going to say, look, it was all true. And here, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Amen.
Amen.